I myself saw him almost every night drink 7,000 calories worth of alcohol.
That he didn't want treatment at that time because he thought it would interfere with his career as a wrestler.
Oh my goodness!
WWE Hall of Famer André the Giant stunned the entire world with his size, standing at 7 feet 4 inches and 520 pounds. And he was even nicknamed the eighth wonder of the world. He passed away in 1998, leaving only one daughter behind after his passing, and all eyes have turned to her in hopes that she would carry on her father's legacy. It's not unusual for kids with famous parents to follow in their parents' footsteps, and André the Giant's daughter, Robin Christensen-Roussimoff, was no exception, earning comparisons to her dad not only for her wrestling skills, but also for her size. How big was Robin? Some say she was even bigger than her dad, but was this true? Stick around and find out. André the Giant. You might know him as André the Giant, but he was born as André René Roussimoff on May 19, 1946, in Coulommiers, France. He supposedly weighed a whopping 13 pounds at birth, and he'd get an awful lot bigger from here onwards. During his time as a professional wrestler, André was often hailed as a native of Grenoble, in the French Alps, but he actually grew up in Moulins, a small town 40 miles east of Paris. He was the middle child out of 5 kids, and none of them seemed to have this growth spurt André had, but it is widely believed that his grandfather appeared to have been taller than what's considered normal. Some people were born with a silver spoon. For André, it was the opposite. To survive, his family worked on farms, but could barely make enough to live on. From a very young age, André began to show signs of gigantism, but it was likely brushed off as a gene he'd inherited from his grandfather. The signs could no longer be ignored, as when he was just 12 years old, he hit the height of 6 feet 3 inches, and after that, he never quite stopped growing. His parents and people around him soon began to realize that this wasn't normal, and was instead a rather strange occurrence, especially since he hadn't exhibited any signs of hormonal imbalance when he was a kid. He started attending the local school when he turned 6, and was initially eager to get educated. Most people aren't aware, but André was academically brilliant, and math was even his favorite subject. Plus, he also happened to be pretty good at sports and was a part of the school's soccer team where he mostly played as a goalkeeper. Those who grew up with him even alluded to the fact that it was nearly impossible to get the ball past André, which really isn't surprising since by the time he turned 10 years old, he was a solid 6-foot wall. Eventually, André's father made him quit school due to the family's financial struggles, after noticing he was able to do the work of 3 men all alone on their family-owned farm. André himself saw reason in this, as he'd lost all the zeal for school, especially since he believed at the time that he'd grow up to be a farmer, and he didn't need school if he was going to end up on a farm. Unfortunately for the farm, André soon got bored of working on it as well, likely because he felt his strength could be used for something more productive than cultivating the earth. It was at this point that he began to share his thoughts on how he wanted to do something more challenging in life. At the age of 17, he made the big move to Paris, where he met a wrestling promoter who thought André had a bright and promising career in professional wrestling. André agreed, signed the deal, and began a career that made him one of the most recognizable wrestlers on the planet. Interestingly, while walking to and back from school back in the day, André sometimes hitched a ride with his neighbor, who turned out to be the famous playwright Samuel Beckett. Anyway, Samuel wouldn't have to worry about giving André rides much longer, as it was as soon as he turned 14, the legal age at the time, that he left school and began to work on the family's farm. André's family recalls that it was around this time that his situation became very noticeable, as he had grown to be nearly 6'6" by the time he turned 15. They wouldn't figure out until decades later that André had acromegaly, a hormonal disorder in which the pituitary gland releases excess growth hormone. The disorder can cause gigantism in children, something André and everyone around him began to notice when he hit a growth spurt at 14. But the growth never ceased, and eventually it resulted in his enlarged head, hands, feet, and chest. His shoe size was an incredible 22, and in his hands, a regular beer can looked like a tiny padlock. Unfortunately, André's size made life rather difficult for him, and not just because he was constantly at the receiving end of spiteful jabs and looks, but because they don't really build anything for giants in our world. Take a look around. Everything around us is built for the human size we perceive to be normal. Take, for instance, back when telephone dials were still the norm, André couldn't use his fingers, so he opted for a pencil whenever he needed to make a call instead. Additionally, he was a wrestler, so he had to travel about 300 days a year for wrestling. But he couldn't squeeze himself into the airplane lavatory, and for this reason, had to constantly relieve himself in a bucket. Plus, unless he was able to use a van that had been customized to his size and taste, driving was rather torturous for him. André told reporters that there were many times he had to ride for several hundred miles in the front seat of a car, and his back and neck always got so stiff. Plus, growing up with acromegaly was specifically difficult because he didn't even know he had a disorder at that point in his life. All he knew was that he was different, as doctors didn't diagnose him while he was growing up in France. It is widely speculated that his first diagnosis was possibly in Japan in 1970, but he was certainly told he had the disorder after treating a broken ankle in 1981. At this point, there were already certain proven ways he could be treated, and although these treatments would not have reversed his growth, it's believed that they could have played a huge role in increasing his life expectancy. Still, André decided not to get treated, but it could have increased his life expectancy. When asked why in the 2018 documentary André the Giant, his doctor explained that André's decision stemmed from his fear that it might interfere with his wrestling career. It helped that André had an oversized appearance, as this was the very reason he chose to become a wrestler, and also why he became such a popular entity in the world. If you were a fan of wrestling back in the 70s and 80s, there's no way you wouldn't have known who this big guy was. His presence was certainly hard to miss, and the fact that he literally towered over everyone added a bit of comic relief to the matches he partook in. But while André might have appeared just a tad bit unusual, he saw the good in his condition, stuck with it, and soon enough, he was dominating the wrestling world in the 1970s and 1980s. André became world famous, made millions, and eventually found crossover success in the movie industry through the acclaimed movie The Princess Bride. Towards the end of his life and career, André finally faced off with Hulk Hogan in a widely anticipated 1987 WrestleMania 3. Sadly, he would die a decade later at the young age of 46 in France. André's height and weight. It's not surprising that André was often the subject of unwanted attention in public. With a size that large, surely everyone would want to get a glimpse at him. However, André didn't share the sentiment, and instead felt that his personal relationships were affected because people only appeared to affiliate with him due to his size. In his words, they wanted to take advantage of him, and he wasn't a fan of that at all. One of the perks of his size was that he could drink quite heavily. There are even speculations and stories that he could consume 100 beers or 20 bottles of wine in a sitting. Although actor Cary Elwes, a Princess Bride co-star, shared that André didn't drink for the sake of drinking, as he was constantly in a lot of pain, as his back wasn't always injured from carrying his weight around. and from other wrestlers breaking stuff all over him. Although it was confirmed that he suffered from acromegaly and was, by all means, a giant, André's exact height remains unknown. For his wrestling career, he usually was described as the 7'4" giant. But anyone who watches wrestling would think that this appears to be hyperbolic in nature. Then there was his French passport, which gave a height in meters that converts to just under 7'2". Some people were split between these two heights, and then there were those who believed André may have stood at just 7 feet, or possibly up to 3 inches shorter than that. For his weight, the same issue persists, as he was often said to weigh 520 pounds. But it could very well be more wrestling exaggeration, as sources believe his weight might have varied from 380 pounds to as much as 555 pounds at the time of his death. Wrestling career. André is famed for once declaring that he simply used what God gave him to make a living. His size played a huge role in helping him conquer the world of wrestling, and he made sure to take advantage of it as much as he could. André's wrestling career began in France in 1966 under the name Jean Ferret, which translates to Gentle Giant. From there, he went on to wrestle in Japan. This time around, he was known as Monster Roussimoff, and in 1971, he made his way to Quebec. 2 years later, wrestling shows were selling out as people trooped in to watch André the Giant fight. He had met Vincent McMahon and began working with him in the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, which later became WWE. Here's how it happened. André first arrived in North America in 1971, landing in Montreal, where he initially wrestled under the name Jean Ferret. His time in Quebec started well, with good crowds showing up for his matches, but interest eventually dwindled. Despite enjoying the atmosphere of Quebec, André realized a change was needed. Through his friend Valois, he secured a meeting with McMahon, a leading figure in professional wrestling based in New York. Describing his first impression of André, McMahon, a tall and elegant man in his 60s, recalls being taken aback by the Giant's sheer presence. "My initial thought was, my God, I never saw such a man," McMahon says. He continued by saying that he'd seen photographs and videotapes, of course, and he knew André was 7'4" and over 400 pounds, but he simply wasn't prepared for how he looked up close. He was unlike anything McMahon had ever seen before, and he knew he could become the #1 draw in wrestling. The Princess Bride. Interestingly, André had a promising career in film. At least he knew if he didn't make it in wrestling, he always had the movie industry to fall back on. Writer William Goldman and director Rob Reiner shared their uniform thoughts on how they believed André was the ideal person to play the character of the giant Fezzik in the 1987 movie The Princess Bride. According to Rob, they had a 3-page scene for André to audition with, and he didn't understand a word the giant had said. But they just knew he had to be in their movie, and surely he still landed the part irrespective of his lack of a solid acting background or even his inability to speak audibly. Impressively, André delivered an absolutely stellar performance, further proving his multidimensional ability to entertain. Although André did very well in the movie, the behind-the-scenes were absolutely terrible for him. He admitted that making the movie wasn't an easy feat for him, and not because he had lines to memorize, but because his back was bothering him so much during filming. As a result, stunts proved difficult, and when he was unable to catch actress Robin Wright in his arms, the production team had to make sure she was held up by cables. Plus, it didn't help matters that due to his size, André himself had to be lifted with cables, especially whenever a scene called for him to ride a horse. But The Princess Bride wasn't the first acting gig André had gotten. Prior to that, he'd appeared in a French film in 1967, in television series such as $6 Million Man in 1976, 1982's The Fall Guy, and the 1984 movie Mickey and Maude. Right after he finished filming The Princess Bride, André was invited to cameo in the 1994 film Trading Mom. But in all the roles he took, people seemed to think none fit his real-life persona more than playing Fezzik. André himself was so proud of his work that he often traveled with a videotape of the film and even enjoyed holding screenings of the movie. Gene Christensen. The full extent of their relationship might never be totally uncovered, but John Christensen was undoubtedly a significant part of André's life. We all need a little bit of love in our lives, whether it's from our family, friends, or random strangers we meet on the road. Although André had millions of fans and supporters from around the world, he needed a different kind of love. André was pretty well known for his figure and his presence in the wrestling ring and on the big screen, but not much was really known about his private life, particularly the relationship he shared with Gene Christensen. Gene Christensen Gantrius was born on August 15, 1949 in Minnesota. She had Danish roots, evident through her last name, which translates to knowledge, leadership, and fairness in Danish. She was extremely private about her family life, since the reason she became so well known was a result of her relationship with André. But it is believed that she wasn't an only child. Although her affiliation with André was the reason the spotlight shone on her, Jeanne was more than just André's partner. In the 1970s, she found work as a model and eventually went on to serve in the public relations sector for wrestling. And it was thanks to this job she met André. When the duo first crossed paths, they both admitted that they weren't in any way drawn to each other. There wasn't an immediate spark or anything of the sort. Given Jean's height of over 6 feet 4 inches, she was glad she'd met someone taller than she was. It is believed that this uniqueness might have greatly contributed to their eventual romantic involvement. It's not clear how the two eventually began a relationship, but soon enough, news about them began to spread, and they soon began to face challenges as a couple. Many sources claim that Jeanne and André were in a very committed relationship, but the exact nature of their union remains kind of a mystery. From what we can tell, their romance likely began around 1972 or 1973, with some reports suggesting that they were married, but never got to officially register their marriage. Unfortunately for these speculations, marriage records show that the duo never filed for a marriage license. Despite this, though, their relationship appeared to be going strong, and even lasted for years, notwithstanding the ups and downs of a relationship slapped right under the spotlight. Although many claimed the bond between Jeanne and André was further solidified with the birth of their daughter, Robin Christensen-Roussimoff, it seemed like their relationship went through a rather tumultuous stage at this time, as André had reportedly refused to acknowledge that Robin was his daughter in the beginning. It was only after a paternity test showed that the child was indeed his daughter before he accepted her as his. Surely, this was bound to ruin whatever it was they had going on for them. Robin didn't exactly get any special treatment, despite being the only child of such a renowned figure. Almost unbelievably, she only met her father 5 times in her life. Obviously, they had some pretty interesting complexities in their family dynamics. Anyway, Jeanne lived a very private life with André, and even after their relationship ended, she still maintained this privacy. She sadly passed away in 2008, leaving a legacy that would certainly continue to intrigue fans and historians. It's interesting how their stories, intertwined yet distinct, offer a glimpse into the world of fame, love, and challenges. Sadly, an era was about to come to an end for André, and it would leave many in utter disbelief for decades to come. Death When someone appears so different from the norm, they could either be held in high regard or treated very poorly. For André, he spent most of his life tethering between these two sides of the fence. To some, he was an absolute icon who could do no wrong, and to others, he was an invincible wrestler so much larger than life that not even death could touch him. Many didn't ever think that he would one day pass on, especially not at the ripe early age of 46. January 28, 1993, in a hotel room in France, André was found dead from what was ruled congestive heart failure as a result of his untreated acromegaly. André had reportedly been in France to attend his father's funeral and pay his family a quick visit. But his plans changed for the worse when he ended up dead himself. André had always had plans to be cremated, but when no crematorium in France was big enough for his body, he was flown back to the United States, where he was cremated, and his ashes scattered at his ranch in North Carolina. The WWE Hall of Famer was considered a true giant of the wrestling business, both literally and figuratively. Being one of the most recognizable and iconic superstars the industry has ever produced, he definitely lived a life not many can boast of. It's often said that he was one major reason wrestling became a mainstream sport. Even though he did live a short life, André's most iconic moments on screen will immortalize him. One such moment was when the world gathered around to watch his iconic WrestleMania 3 appearance. It was quite possibly this moment that marked his emergence as a fan favorite. And let's be real, André getting body slammed by Hulk Hogan is honestly one of the all-time greatest moments in wrestling. After his passing, several wrestlers and fellow co-stars in the entertainment industry came out to share their favorite memories and condolences with his family, friends, and fans. One such person was Stephanie McMahon, who claimed she had a friendly relationship with André. It was one of the lesser-known WWE friendships. Stephanie openly shared that André was her childhood best friend, recounting how she would attend his matches and witness his memorable moments live. In an interview with D Magazine, she revealed that their bond began when she was around 7 or 8 years old, sparked by her observations of how differently people in WWE treated André because of his size. Stephanie also revealed that she didn't like how people treated him differently just because of his size. And that was actually how they bonded, because she asked him one day if it bothered him. She thinks he was surprised that such a little person would ask him such a big question. And boom, that was the start of their relationship. During André's era, even passionate wrestling fans like Stephanie were amazed when Hulk Hogan famously body-slammed the 8th wonder of the world at WrestleMania 3. This moment is just one of the many highlights of André the Giant's extraordinary career. André's daughter. André might have lived a short life, but thankfully he was survived by his daughter Robin, whom he willed all of his property to upon his passing. Although André and Jean were never officially married, they had Robin during a period when André's demanding wrestling career kept him on the move, making it challenging for him to be present in her life. Their co-parenting relationship was, therefore, often tense due to these circumstances. Growing up, Robin would occasionally meet her father when he had wrestling matches near Seattle, and they would stay connected through phone calls. Reflecting on their relationship, Robin has shared that she believes they might have grown closer had André lived longer. Tragically, after his passing in January 1993 due to congestive heart failure while in Paris, Robin and her mother only learned of it a month later when his attorney left a message on their answering machine. Despite the difficulties in their relationship, which Robin attested to, André made her the main beneficiary in his will. It's therefore not surprising that Robin followed in her father's footsteps by pursuing a career in wrestling and later ventured into acting. Although unlike her father, Her journey in the wrestling industry didn't unfold as she had hoped, leading her to explore other fields and ultimately establishing herself as an actress, all while contributing to projects related to her father's legacy. In recent years, Robin has notably been involved in projects like the film adaptation of the book André the Giant, Closer to Heaven, and the television documentary André the Giant. She ensured to oversee the documentary, where she highlighted his remarkable life and contributions to the world of professional wrestling and entertainment. When it comes to her financial standing, Robin's net worth is estimated at $10 million, thanks in part to her career in wrestling and ongoing royalties from WWE, which continues to use André's name for various events. As expected, she holds the rights to her father's name across different media platforms, including video games and action figures. Taking a look back on André's legacy, he was one of the highest-paid wrestlers in history, amassing considerable wealth during his illustrious career. This wealth was divided among 3 beneficiaries, with Robin inheriting a significant portion of his assets alongside other beneficiaries. As for her personal life, Robin keeps it private just like her mother used to, and details about her relationships or family life remain undisclosed to the public. She tries to maintain a low profile, instead choosing to focus on her career and preserve her privacy away from the media spotlight. We know you've been wondering just how similar in size Robin is to her father. Well, he definitely didn't need a paternity test to determine that she was his daughter, because the resemblance is uncanny. Physically, Robin stands at 5 feet 11 inches tall, about 180 centimeters, weighs 220 pounds or 100 kilograms, and has a body measurement of 44 inches. So while Robin might not be as gigantic as either of her parents, she has forged her own path in the entertainment industry while honoring her father's legacy. Her contributions to films and documentaries about André the Giant reflect her deep connection to his story, and her financial success highlights the lasting impact of André's iconic career. Currently, Robin resides in Seattle, Washington, and has taken a much-needed hiatus from wrestling. Anyway, whatever choice she might make, we know André the Giant is smiling down at her. He might have passed away a long time ago, but his enormous legacy endures and lives on, as Robin very much values his memory above all else. Which of André the Giant's fights was the most memorable for you? Let us know in the comments below.